my name is Claudia Green and this is She Did That, the podcast shining a spotlight on remarkable women who are breaking barriers and proving that greatness knows no gender. From female founders who have raised millions of pounds, the investors changing the landscape as we know it, to survivors of tragedy who have achieved the amazing and many more. We will share the stories of these incredible women who will inspire and empower you. In order to support us and these women, please subscribe on your viewing or listening channel of choice so we can continue our mission of sharing the stories that should and need to be heard. So today's guest is the ultimate girl boss. She co-founded a business with her sister, aged 21, with no commercial experience. She has raised over £100 million to date and is creating a new asset class within the food industry. I am really excited to welcome Gini Newton. Gini, thank you so much for being here. I've been really, really excited to get you on the podcast because to me, you are the epitome of the girl boss.
Oh, that's cool. Thanks.
So I'm really excited to delve into everything. You've obviously accomplished a lot. So yeah, let's get
started.
It sounds like it's been a journey. It sounds like you need a very elongated sabbatical holiday.
Oh my God, imagine. This is me announcing that I'm going away.
Not for long though, not without your laptop.
2 days.
Okay. Exactly. That's the life of an entrepreneur. But no, seriously, I'm in awe of your journey. You've accomplished so much. And I think it's a real example to other people of how you can achieve things and be successful. And you are the epitome of an entrepreneur because you've been so scrappy and your hustle mentality is incredible. So let's go back to the beginning. Mm-hmm. You grew up in London with your 3 siblings.
Yes.
Sister and 2 brothers.
I have 2 brothers, 2 older brothers and an older sister. So I'm the youngest, the baby of the family. And I've got 2 brothers who are a little bit older. Mm-hmm. So have I learned anything from them? Maybe I should say it just in case
how to defend yourself.
Yeah, how to protect my food, because that's the thing, big families, the dinner table is a stressful place. So I actually eat really quickly because of them, and that's a real problem because I've always been like, don't take my food. But yeah, so grew up in London, but my sister and I are like the closest of ages, and obviously we run both the businesses together too.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to delve into that. And your parents are both entrepreneurs.
Yes.
How did that kind of equip you sort of mindset and capability wise for what you've achieved now?
Yeah, so my dad had both my parents have factories in Bermondsey next door to each other. That's how they met. And growing up, business was a big part of our world. When you run your own businesses, there are good months and bad months. And I think Eccie and I saw the nature of having your own business and what that did to our parents. And it just felt very normal. So holidays, if we went on holiday, they were on the phone a lot of the time. And I used to always be really frustrated, like, oh my God, why are they always on the phone? But now I really get that. So I think that set us up in the way that starting your own business didn't feel like a risk. It just felt like it's something that you do, you make money, you test, you try and expand. And I don't think in our heads, we really realized it was just we didn't go into it we're going to start our own business. We just went into doing something, making a product, making money, and then it grew into a business. It wasn't like a long-term plan or a business plan. It really just, we fell into it. And I think probably having 2 parents that had done their own thing, set us up for that.
So when you initially started the business, in your mind, was it, okay, maybe this is actually just going to be a small business?
Yeah.
You didn't have these huge growth plans?
100%. I mean, Karma Cans, our first business, corporate catering, we went into it very much my sister was a chef. She worked in lots of different restaurants across London. And we pretty much just fell into making a product to make money, and we were doing it out of our mum's kitchen. I didn't want to work with my sister at all. Actually, at that time, we still are very different people, but we weren't even that close. We got closer from working together, and I had big plans for my future. Definitely, I actually wanted to work for, a company. I definitely didn't want to do my own thing. And Eccie likewise was moving to. Actually, she was going to Istanbul she was doing a master's in conflict and terrorism, and she had a job that might take her to Istanbul. So we really were just doing this to make money, and we love food, and it was really fun at the beginning. So no business plan, we just kind of fell into it, and then it just grew from that point on. When I left university, and I just was like, okay, like maybe we should start selling this to a few more people, offices, and then it grew in a very gradual way. But there wasn't like a plan that went into, this is our business and this is our finances and this is, we're going to raise money. The first business was very much like, it just happened.
Yeah. And what's really rare and unusual is that you've pretty much gone from university to running your own company.
Yeah.
You didn't work for anybody else, which is definitely not a common path to take. It's incredible. But tell me a bit about the early days of Karma Cans, like day one. How you just thought, right, we're going to start a corporate catering company. How did you get clients?
Yeah, it was probably not working in an office. Well, I'd worked in more kind of hospitality, so like on the ground work. And I think probably we made every mistake in the book, not having that experience to bring to the table. It's pretty, you're learning on the job. So everything from like hiring to management, those were big learning curves. It started really with a friend of ours was having this auction for charity, and he said, do you girls have a skill you can auction off? And Eccie was making these incredible meals for herself at uni every day. She's just an incredible chef. It's inspirational watching her like come up with different recipes. And so she said, I'll do a week of packed lunches. And that's kind of where it started. This one office, Chancery Lane. This guy loved our food and he ordered it every single day for himself. And then he was like, oh, I want this for my whole team. And so that was when it was born, really. And the interesting thing is delivery wasn't a thing back then. Delivery didn't exist. It was actually Deliverance was the, I don't know if you remember Deliverance.
I've never heard of Deliverance.
It was like the first, you could have anything you wanted from any like country, and it was cooked in one kitchen. And
what?
It was, that was like before Deliveroo, and that was the only kind of delivery product.
Yes.
And the hardest sell was actually selling in delivery. So I remember telling people we're doing a delivery corporate like lunch business. And so many people were like, why would I want food delivered to my desk? It's weird thinking about that now, but at the time, people didn't really want, like they wanted to go out for lunch. But something was changing the market. It was basically this was 2014. So 2008 was obviously, we had a really bad recession and there was a big recovery. And in that recovery period, people were working harder than ever. They didn't have 2 hours for lunch. They had like 20 minutes. And something was changing the market. Now with businesses, often a gap opens, an opportunity, and it's all about timing. I didn't know that this was happening in the market. I didn't have a business plan and I wasn't smart enough to think about things like that at the time. I was 21. So things were changing where this amazing opportunity was opening up where people needed like a fast, healthy fix. And that's where Karma Cans was born. So in the early days, it was just us two. We were running from my mum's kitchen in Clerkenwell and doing not that many lunches, but thinking we were doing like a crazy trade. But we didn't really have overheads. Like it's revenue driven. Everything we made went back into buying the ingredients, making a small amount of profit. Really like didn't understand much more about a business than that. So we grew in a very gradual way. Then from that point on, my mum was like, get out of my kitchen, you're taking over. And we were like, okay, the next step is we have to find our own space. And there was not really infrastructure to help food businesses grow. So we took a club kitchen in Soho and we used their space for like 8 hours in the morning. And we were probably a nightmare to share their kitchen with. We were kids, and we didn't really understand about like health and safety regulations. Again, learning on the job. They were amazing because like they put up with us. And eventually after 3 months in their kitchen, they were like, it's time for you guys to leave because we were just taking over. I mean, our volumes were high. I mean, now thinking about the volumes, they weren't that high, but we were probably doing 100 meals a day, which felt like
I think that's quite high volume. I guess for
it was 100% it is, and it felt like impossible. And every day was a challenge. We're like, how are we going to get this food out on time? And at that point, we hired like our first kind of chef to help out. We hired a cyclist. So previously, it was Eccie and me doing all the cooking, fighting loads because we were overlapping in our roles, and then we hired, and then Eccie would cycle all the lunches across London. I was really bad at cycling, so I got away with not doing much cycling. And so then we hired our first team members. And at that point, we moved out of that kitchen, it's just like so much you can see like moving.
Yeah.
It's very hectic the first kind of few years.
Yeah.
And then we took a shipping container in Hackney and we put a kitchen in there, a secondhand kitchen. We kitted it out. We traded lots of favors. I had a friend who was a plumber and he was starting a business too. So I said, I'll do all your food for your investors and your pitches, and can you plumb our kitchen for free? So it was all of that, basically.
Early hustling.
Exactly. Built that kitchen, and then within 3 months, we were doing 300 meals from that space. We had to move again. So the whole journey of Karma Cans just feels lots of building, construction, capex, moving again.
And how are you, because obviously like in the early days, you don't really have a marketing budget. You're just making this small profit from each meal. How are you getting your name out there?
Can I just say I don't have a marketing team in any of the businesses. Yeah, we've never done marketing.
That's really interesting.
Which is really wild. And actually, this week I hired a marketing manager at Karma Kitchen, and the team were like, finally marketing. I was like, yeah, marketing, sales is the first thing that we care about. I'm now learning that now it's time for marketing. But I've never done marketing at all. It's all through so I guess my background, obviously I've never worked in another business doing a role, but I realized that like sales and commercials where I kind of love, and that's where I feel really comfortable. So how we got our name out at Karma Cans was I would basically research office managers or like buildings and find the person's name who was in charge of catering. So normally in corporate catering sits with office managers, facility managers, receptionists, EAs, and I would basically pretend, this sounds really bad, but I would pretend I had a meeting with those people, and I would turn up at their office with food and say, hey, it's Gini from Karma Cans, I've got a meeting with so-and-so. And they'd be like, oh, really? And quite often I would get in front of that person and be able to say like, look, I've got some free food. And most of the time they'd be like, wow, free food. Sometimes they'd be really freaked out and be like, why are you here? And who are you? And can you get out of my office? But that was how I got us out there. And I only needed a few customers at the beginning to really get the product out there. And then with corporate catering, you win one office, you win 100 people sometimes. So originally it was individuals and corporate, and then delivery came into the market. And that really made us rethink our model. We couldn't compete with individual delivery. It was also really expensive and hard to do. So we moved fully just to corporate, and that was the best really decision we ever made, because rather than selling to 50 individuals, we were selling to one office with 50 people. So it changed our margin. But it took, learning about that and growing, making mistakes to understand that was a better model for us. But getting our name out was really just about like picking up the phone. I mean, really just calling and turning up at people's offices.
That's really ballsy,
freaky.
Because most people in their early sales career are on a telephone. Like yours turning up.
Yeah, it's really, really weird.
Face to face.
And then I remember hiring a team, and I called it guerrilla sales. I guess it's similar to guerrilla marketing, where you basically I gave all of these, sales managers. I mean, we didn't really have titles back then because we didn't know who even we were. We just found this. And I just briefed them on the plan. So you would take a bag of lunches, like you would take 6, and we'd plan out your route, and you would turn up at all of their offices with a lunch, and you would know about the business, and you would just talk about Karma Cans, and then you would follow up. And that was our strategy. So yeah, it was kind of scrappy and crazy, but now that's how we did it. That's how we got most of our beginning clients. And then we were so lucky. Huffington Post did a piece on Eccie and I, which was mad, and it made us feel this is when we were still in our mum's kitchen, and we were pretending. It was all like very much fake it till you make it. We were pretending we're a lot bigger than we are, than we were, and they did an amazing piece on us. So it got our brand out there too, and that was the first bit of press. And then we got like quite a lot of press because we were the first people doing delivery. It felt like a new concept, and it was all about sustainability, reusing packaging, doing everything with bike deliveries. So it felt very original at that time. Now this sounds really weird talking about the originality of delivery, but it felt really original at the time, pre all of these big delivery companies. So really sales was the key to us getting our name out there, like sales focused.
I think it's interesting what you say, faking it till you make it, because that is so true. Like I started my business sitting on my grandma's bed, and I was taking all my first calls on my grandma's bed. And then I worked with a really big fintech, and they were like, tell me about your operation. And I was like, Grandma, I'm just jumping on a call right now. And she was like, okay, I'll be quiet. And I'd be like, well, we've got a team. We didn't have a team. It was literally just me. But I think it's like, I think that's a really important thing, is like, you do have to fake it till you make it.
I know. And there was this really funny moment where we were doing a partnership with a big drinks brand, and the guy who was like running this partnership was he's become a friend, such a great person, and he actually went on to start his own businesses, so we've really worked together. But at that time he said, oh my God, can I come see your kitchen operation? And we were like, oh, we're really busy. We're in our mum's kitchen still, so we didn't want to tell the truth, so we were just like, oh, it's just really hectic right now, so busy, let's meet at a coffee shop. And again, we just didn't want anyone to know the truth of like how small we were, because then it would just take away from like, you know, the look and the feel of the business. And you want to look like you're bigger than you are. You want to look very professional. And of course, you're still making a really good product and you still have like the right food hygiene. It's just that you are not as big as your website might make you look.
No, but it's like the chicken and the egg, isn't it, really? Because people want to use trusted companies and people who can sort of attest to how well you do things. But how do you get your first big
client
break, essentially, which is always like the difficult one. But you're right, you just have to go in there and be ballsy. It's like when I started my business, I emailed HR to do their recruitment literally 10 times. And they were like, just drop it. We don't want to work with you. And so I did 6 combinations of the CEO's email address.
Oh yeah.
And I messaged him and I was just like, I'm sure you know how it feels. And it just struck a chord, and he was like, meet me in Starbucks tomorrow. And he's literally, this guy's worth 8 billion now. And he was like, everyone ignored me except him. But it's like, sometimes you do just have to be really, really, really ballsy with it and just go for it.
Definitely. And I think if you have a product that you believe in, like I knew our food was good. I just needed to get it in front of the right person. And so I could be really confident in going into that meeting or turning up at someone's office and be like, okay, I actually think you're going to really like this. So yeah, it does work.
And what's it like working with your sister?
Yeah, it's amazing. It honestly is. I mean, at the beginning, talking about the early days of Karma Cans, it came with its challenges, you know. We're very different people and we think in completely different ways. And at the beginning, because we didn't know what our roles were, we were overlapping on a lot of tasks, and that's where the friction really starts. And I think with any co-founders, if you are doing the same role, that's when you probably will fight. The key and the pivotal moment for us was when we started to trust each other at what we were good at. So I'm more on the commercial side and she's more on the kind of strategy side and operations side. So when I realized like Eccie is so unbelievable what she does, I can just leave her to it and I know she's going to do an amazing job. That's when like that trust and that division of labor is like the key to success. And the only time we really disagree is when we start like working on the same parts again of a business. The key to siblings is that you can be completely honest. And I think with colleagues, it's really hard to be completely transparent.
Well, it's like, don't sue me.
Yeah, you have to. But the best relationships are the most honest ones, right? Progression only happens when you can say exactly how you're feeling and the things that you need and the things that you want. And with siblings, especially siblings that think in such different ways, that run a business together, we do, you know, Eccie's a big thinker. Like her ideas are incredible. I'm more of an executor. So I can basically tell her when it's time to execute on some of these crazy ideas, and I can tell ideas that are not good or ideas that are great. And we just found a really great, you know, relationship that works well for us. And it's based on true honesty, but it's definitely harsh at times. You know, we really can be quite brutal when you're raising money. That's a really challenging time. It really can stretch anyone's relationship with your team, with your colleagues. It's a very intense environment, and we're super critical of each other when we're pitching, when we're rehearsing. You have to be in that world because it has to be perfect. And that's probably led us to have these 2 businesses, because we work well, we're very honest, and I can tell her when she's a nightmare and she can tell me, no, nightmare. We can move on, we can forgive each other, and we can get to a solution really quickly.
I think you can have that with siblings, and I'm not saying all siblings because I have heard horror stories as well, but I think the key ingredient of what I've heard and from people I've interviewed is that trust is the number one thing if you're partners. And that's really hard when you meet someone or even if you've worked with them, you don't really truly know a person until you've gone through something quite difficult. But I guess if you've grown up in the same house and not killed each other, then there's a good indicator that it might work.
Yeah, of course, you trust each other. You know that you can't just leave, you can't just walk away. Even though I remember the early days at Karma Cans, I did leave. I walked out. I walked out and I had nowhere to go. We were living together at home and I was so angry. I said, I'm leaving. And then I sort of walked around the block a few times.
You were like, oh shit, I've got nowhere to go.
Yeah, I've got to go back.
That's it.
So embarrassing. I've got to go back. Got to get the food out.
I think age helps as well. As you get older, it does become a bit easier. Like my brother's helped me with my business and now I'm able to take his criticism and advice, but I would have scratched his eyes out if 10 years ago he'd have tried to tell me what to do.
Definitely. I think the other thing is when you hire external people into your team, you have to start being more professional, and that shifts the way that you speak to each other. You can't, the first person we hired, I feel really sorry for that person because we were probably fighting. It was really, really awkward.
I hate you.
I know. And I just feel for that person now. But when you learn, actually, you can't make your team feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Look, there are times in meetings where we share a look. I've kicked her under the table before, don't worry. But you learn how to be more professional. And of course, we are siblings, and part of working for siblings is that it's comical. Sometimes we do have disagreements, and that's part of the fun.
Yeah. Well, at least you don't live together as well.
We did during COVID.
Oh, okay.
We don't anymore. It was too much.
That's
we had
really
a period
intense.
where we did live together with 5 of our friends, which was great.
Oh my God, that sounds really fun. And
just
obviously
before COVID.
Eccie's a chef.
Yeah, well, we
So it
all
was
love
wonderful.
cooking. So Eccie and I did take a lot of the cooking on, but it was brilliant.
So let's talk about COVID.
Yeah.
Corporate catering company in a time where there are no offices open. How the hell did you survive?
Yeah, that was a bleak time. I mean, I remember the week before lockdown, and on the Monday, having a meeting with the team and setting out 3 plans, A, B, and C. And C was that we were going to go into a lockdown. And I remember saying, C won't happen. It's not going to happen. But A and B might, and that's what we have to deal with. But I'm pretty sure C won't happen. And the crazy thing is you know very little. Your team are looking at you to have the answers, but like everyone, no one really had been in this position before. And so C did happen. We went into a lockdown, and it was really, everyone did panic for a little bit. The first 2 weeks, knowing what, we lost. It was our busiest month as well. We were having the busiest year, and suddenly all of our clients disappeared overnight, and we didn't know how long for. So, corporate catering was the first thing to really go because offices shut down. So, other people were working remotely, but for us, that was the first thing.
option.
It's gone. So what are we going to do? Our team were incredible. We spent 2 weeks trying to think about who needs food and how can we use our space, right? We have a big commercial kitchen, a big CPU in Hackney. We've got an incredible team, and the team just this was just such an amazing time for us because we just had a moment to step back, which we haven't in 9 years. Karma Cans, we've been running for 9 years, and we never had an opportunity to pause, think about our business, think about our margin, think about who we want to be. This 2 weeks was just a brainstorming session where everyone was like, okay, what can we do? We tried a lot of different things. We tried Deliveroo, it wasn't right for us. And then we thought about NHS catering. So that was what we focused on during COVID. We got a contract with the NHS, so we did it through a charity, and we were doing 1,000 meals a day for different hospitals.
Oh my goodness.
So it was very wild. When everything was closed, it was the first time I'd been in the kitchen for years as well. So Eccie and I would also go and do some shifts in the kitchen, hairnets on, gloves, PPE, and the team were amazing. It was incredible to work with such a great team during that period. And 1,000 meals a day, for us, we were used to doing high volume, but it just felt incredible, working so closely with this team. We had to do a whole new menu because obviously to make it work, we had to think about how also it had to be really healthy. It had to keep, the nurses, the doctors, everyone going in the hospital. So it was just, it was a lot. And it was a time where I remember going home, my housemates hadn't seen anyone else, and I was working with a team every single day, going to the kitchen every day. And that really took us through. That saved the business. It kept our team in work. It kept everyone together. It was just an incredible time. And then coming out of COVID, we didn't know what it was going to look like. So it took a while to kind of recover because we came out of lockdown, we went back into lockdown. So it was a very challenging time. But now it feels like corporate catering is booming and people are going back to the office. And we're actually so surprised. We thought it would take a lot longer to see people go back to a normal way of working. It may be 3 days in the office, but those 3 days they're spending money on catering to get, morale up and to get people back in. So catering is having a real moment right now, which is exciting.
Yeah. And I think it's amazing to have been able to withstand the whole period of COVID. And what it sounds like is, did you turn a profit that year?
We did. Yeah.
Which is incredible because
we were a lean team. It was a tight one, but we didn't lose money, and that was unbelievable, really.
Yeah.
We did a lot of different projects for kind of vulnerable people as well, and shelters and stuff like that, where it was just like at cost, But we did those things because it felt like it was this strange time where everyone felt like they were working together and we were trying to help anyone that was vulnerable. And the NHS thing was amazing because it's high volume, but it allowed us to do other projects that were just like basically giving food really away at cost. But it was a really important thing to do at that time. I think everyone was just trying to, if you had space, it was all about how you can utilize it to help the vulnerable people that needed food. And that was quite a weird way of running a business where before your clients are corporate and you're trying to make profit. This was like, who can we help? How can we keep our team? How can we keep everyone working through this time? We don't know how long it's going to be. And it was just, I never run a business like that. So it made me think in a different way. But coming out of COVID, that knowledge and understanding margin and realizing that basically, if you just reinvent your whole product for one customer group, you can actually turn a potential profit.
Yeah.
I need to think about my business in a whole different way. And so it made me think in a different way about Karma Cans when we left COVID.
Well, you've got to be really scrappy and kind of change up your ideas in order to adapt to a new market.
And that COVID period was about survival. So we survived, and that's all that really mattered. You were just trying to survive and cover our costs just a little bit. And if you can make a tiny profit on that, that's fantastic. The next year is about like, okay, recovery. And now it's like, okay, how can we be really profitable?
Yeah. So talk to me about Karma Kitchens, because you started off with Karma Cans and then Karma Kitchens was born. How did that come about? What was the idea behind it?
So through Karma Cans and running a catering business, the thing I learned was that I spent a lot of my time and my money on building kitchens and not enough on sales and marketing and hiring a really good team. And if I was to start again, if I had a solution to building my own kitchen, spending my money in that place, I think I could have had more success faster. So with Karma Cans, we obviously moved kitchens 3 times in 1 year. We spent a lot of money on equipment, and bear in mind, secondhand equipment. It's not even good equipment. And I wish that there was a solution. And that made us think, when we took our final kitchen in Hackney, which Karma Cans is still in today, it was a big jump in rent. And we were really worried about how we were going to cope with that increased rent. But we knew we had to take this lease, and it was a 5-year lease, a lot more expensive than the kitchen container that we had. And we subletted it to different people in food. So we rented a tiny corner to Island Poke, who did rice production. They were a lot smaller then. And they did a bit of rice production in one corner of our kitchen. 26 Grains, who has a shop in Neal's Yard, did catering in our space. And we had a Pickle House who does amazing like pickle juice, and Bloody Mary McShee rented storage space from us. And we actually built our office as a mezzanine above our kitchen. So it was 600 square foot, but it was a really high warehouse. So we knew we needed office space. So we put like industrial kind of scaffolding above it. And our office was above our kitchen.
How do you even think of this stuff?
Just because you need it. And this is like out of need. You're like, okay, and I met a scaffolding guy who was doing some construction at the end of the road. And I said, like, how much would it cost? And he was like, yeah, sure, just pay in cash. I was like, okay, great. So he built me a little office. It's just wild thinking about this, but we used to climb a ladder to our office, and every time there was like something like chilies on the menu, it would like burn our eyes while we were working, and I'd be on a sales call and you could hear like the extraction in the background. So we had this space that was not built to be shared, but we made it work by letting it out to different people in the food to help us have a bigger space. And that's just not feasible for every other business. So we wanted to build, we came up with this idea. Actually, my mum said something really funny to me. She said, look, we were having a really tough time at Can't Cans at this stage. And she said, you could make more money if you just rented out your space. And I was so angry that she said that. But it must have stuck with me for a while. And the weird thing is, after Eccie and I came up with Karma Kitchen, we came up with this idea to build industrial kitchens that were amazing, like co-working kitchens, a space that is meant to be shared for lots of different people in food across the whole food sector. At that point, then Karma Can started doing really, really well. So we sort of we were torn whether to start two businesses. And a lot of people said, why would you start another business? You already have a really successful business. But at that point, we just got to a really good point with Karma Cans. An amazing team were behind it. And it allowed us to have the headspace to step back a bit and focus on Karma Kitchen. So then Karma Kitchen was born. It was a very different business. It not revenue driven. You can't just build kitchens. You need CapEx. You need to raise money. So I learned about a totally different type of business, which is you have a business plan and you have to pitch. And that was all very new to me. So it was born as a solution for something I needed when I started my business. And I do think the best businesses are born from something that you need, and it's a solution-led business. So yeah.
So as someone with, no prior commercial experience working anywhere else other than for yourself, let alone fundraising experience.
Yeah.
How did you tackle that?
Yes, that was a real journey. Fundraising, we were really slow at fundraising firstly because we had no idea how to go about it. We knew that we needed to raise, so we did a seed round for our first site in Hackney. Now, when we started the business, I really thought, okay, we'll build 1 or 2 sites in London and that's really the business. We spoke to different angels and that was the route in. It took us a long time. And we had an incredible landlord who was Karma Can's landlord. And because we knew him really well, he gave us our first site. So it was a leasehold site. And because I don't think we would have been able to work with the other landlord who didn't know us because we had no track record. And so we had the site and that helped us, and we had the business plan. And because we had these 2 things, that helped us kind of look a little bit more serious. And we raised a small seed round to build our first site. And our first site, Eccie and I and our friend basically did all of the design. Looking back at that site, it's very different to our now sites. It still exists. It's still really popular. But our first site in Hackney was only 3,000 square foot. And we opened it and it was just amazing. We filled it up with all different people in food, doing different things, very catering focused really. And yes, this was just, it was before COVID. I think our first site was, it was 2018.
So it's all grown quite quickly.
Yes.
If you actually put it into perspective, from opening a new business on top of an existing one, fundraising.
Yes.
It's a lot.
It's definitely
But it sounds like it's actually really fun. Like you've got an amazing community of people within the food industry that you get to share the struggles with each other, because I don't know much about catering.
Yeah.
Apart from helping my best friend do her child's first birthday party, and I was crying after 3 hours. So if that's any reflection of
Long
what it's
hours
like.
catering, it puts you in a good place for basically running like a catering business that's revenue driven, puts you in a great position for like the raising money journey and like building a business with investors' money, because catering, the early days, you're working 7 days a week. You are working long hours. You start very early, and you become very resilient to that type of work. And running a bootstrap business, you have to make money. You have no choice. Otherwise, you can't hire a team. You can't buy a bike. You can't, we would have these decisions where we needed a new oven and we needed a new bike and we didn't know what to prioritize. And that's the situation you're in. So when starting Karma Kitchen, Eccie and I ran it in a very similar way, and we still do. It's like we run it like it doesn't have any money. Like you have to turn profit. That's a priority. And yeah, the way that we run Karma Kitchen is, I think, a result of that.
And are there any moments, and I'm sure there are many, but have there been any moments where you've actually thought to yourself, this might not work, we have to think of plan B, whatever that might be?
At Karma Can's catering, the catering world has been up and down, and there have been many moments where I thought we were going to fail. That is definitely a part of our journey, and amazingly, we're still here today after COVID. I thought we were going to have to close at one point in COVID. So yes, with Karma Cans, 100%, I think every founder has that journey. With Karma Kitchen, again, when we were raising money, it was very challenging. And there was a point where we went to raise money and we went into lockdown 1. I think we were 3 weeks into the first lockdown, and we were raising a substantial amount of money, and we thought that we were closing and we'd done the legal work and the money was going to be in our account. And very sadly, our investors at the time, they were brilliant, but who could have predicted COVID and a lockdown? Their fund full collapsed. And at that point, yes, that was when Eccie and I are pretty strong, but I hit a real wall. We were in COVID, you don't have your family, and you suddenly have a business where you thought you had a certain amount of money coming to your account. And I'd started building another location. I had a whole build team, and that fund had collapsed. And so we had 3 weeks to get another deal on the table. So yes, that was a really, really hard time, I think. And that's one of the hardest moments I remember, because I had a really great vision of what Karma Kitchen was going to be. And I was so excited to deliver on that. And suddenly something was out of my hands, and what can you do? Nothing can predict that. And that was definitely challenging. And so had to raise again, but in a very time pressure environment in COVID, which is a very hard time to raise money. That was a very bad time. But we pulled it together. But yeah, I didn't know what was going to happen, and I had to keep the team strong, keep everyone believing that we were going to turn it around. But it really sat with Eccie and me to pull out the bag. And when things get tough, everyone looks to the founders to really hold it together. And if you panic, your team will panic. I always say to my team, like, unless I'm worrying, you don't need to worry. And I said that to Karma Can's team when COVID hit and everyone was panicking about their jobs. And I said, until you see me worry, do not worry. And that's like really important as a founder, that you lead through crisis and chaos and you stay calm. And that will be the most challenging part of any founder's journey.
Yeah, but I think, when you hit those walls in a business, you do have those times where you don't sleep and you feel sick to your stomach and filled with dread. Yeah. And it's like very, very difficult. And I think obviously you must be a good leader intuitively, because nobody had led you, nobody had managed you. You didn't have an example of what good or bad looked like. And you were very, very young as well when you started the business. Or maybe you did, but how did you not blur boundaries? Because that's a really key. I know for my first business, boundaries were non-existent. I got too involved in my staff's lives.
Yeah.
How did you know where to toe the line?
Yeah, it's such an interesting one. I probably made mistakes. I mean, the early days of Karma Cans, definitely we were not good managers. And I think back to times that I've had conversations where I wasn't a good manager and I wasn't a good leader, and I can be fully accountable. But I was also 21 and Eccie was like 20, just 23. So we had to learn through making those mistakes and having a really great team around me. I always like ask for feedback as a manager too. I think it's really important to learn from your team. And I still do, even with my team now. Like I, in reviews, want to know what I can do more of. Is there anything that I'm not doing? I'm still learning. I'm not the perfect manager. I'm not the perfect leader. I don't think anyone can get to that point. So I'm definitely better than I was in the early days, but I still want to learn. And I want my management team to learn. And to do that, you have to also take on feedback. And it's a hard thing to ask, it's a scary thing to ask, but it's so important. And the boundaries also are really important between, work colleagues and friends. And I've been really strict with that throughout my whole career. And I've seen, other businesses do it differently. But for me, it's really important to have boundaries, because at the end of the day, you can be supportive, but you aren't someone's friend. No. You're there to give them the best possible opportunities in your business. But you have to also know where those boundaries lay. And that's a really important line to always have.
I think sometimes it's difficult. There are times where you can't be liked and respected at the same time, but you need to be respected at all times.
Yes, I know that. Of course, there are going to be times when, as managers and as founders and as people leading, of course, like when things go wrong, people are going to that you're going to be the brunt of a lot of conversations. It's
They're
okay.
going to go home and
that's
like, oh,
okay.
my
And you just have
boss.
to, that's okay. And like, you're not there to make friends. You're there to provide an amazing workspace that your team can flourish in. And I think when people start businesses later in life, they've had like colleagues and friends, and it's a really hard line because they're on their own, and they realize that like their team are their team, and that they have a function to make sure that their team have a great place to work and have progression. But sadly, they can no longer have those like friendships in the same way. It's okay. You can, it's a type of friendship, but it has a professional element to it, and that's an important thing to really consider.
Yeah, I think so. And so next question.
Yeah.
Ballpark figure. How much roughly have you raised to date?
Yeah, it's over 100 million.
Wow. So for anyone, I think that's a massive achievement. But sadly, the statistics don't lie. For a woman-founded business, that's extremely, extremely rare. Is that something you've had time to reflect on and think, we are in the vast minority, like this is rare?
I think that honestly, you don't really think about anything but like raise money, on to the next thing, what I've got to do, execution. So I do recognize that raising money is challenging anyways, and I've witnessed it myself, and raising money as a woman in private equity definitely has its challenges too. But I think I don't want to focus on the challenges and being a woman. I want to focus on like, okay, what do I have to now deliver on? Like one thing is like saying you want to raise, one thing is raising, and now it's like I have to deliver for my investors, and that's where I focus on. Eccie and I don't spend enough time really looking at what we've done. It's just now like, okay, right, we have to deliver on everything that we've promised. I think raising that kind of money, the reason we raised such a big fund was because the raising journey opened up a lot of different like questions for us about, originally we went to raise a smaller like 3 million, and we were looking at VC, and actually we learned that our model doesn't work in that way. We are very capital heavy, and this is the other thing, clueless to knowing what even VC did when I first started Karma Kitchen. I just heard like, oh, people raise through VC, great. Got rejected from every VC in London, and then realized, okay, this is not the right way to go about raising money. I didn't really understand fully about private equity at this stage until I spoke to one of the big PEs about how to structure a raise that could be way more appropriate for a real estate business. And that's how the sum was so big, is because we basically realized like we're a real estate business. That's what we are. We build kitchens, but we buy freeholds and then we turn them into amazing space. And that suddenly shifted the way that we started, like who we started talking to. And when we raised that big sum of money, it was to basically disrupt the real estate market too. So it was a real learning journey on like, okay, you have to understand where the money comes from and what your business is and what you want your strategy and your exit to be to raise the right amount. And that's kind of how it happened.
Is it a bit more of a long game when you raise that sum of money and you obviously have plans and ambitions to open up various locations and various places? Like it must take a lot of time to actually get from starting point to, even though you don't know where the finishing point is, but to get to a point where it's like, okay, bye, I'm going to sell.
It's a massively long game. I mean, you're buying real estate, you're building space, you're turning it into incredible workspace, and then you're growing across London. It's not quick. There's nothing about this is quick. I can tell you that for sure. Like, you find a site and you open it, that can take a year. So there's nothing speedy about what we do, but it's not really about that, and also you're building an amazing network of clients and you're growing them, and these things take time, and private equity is way more appropriate for our visions than VC. It is just a longer period of time, and it does take a lot more money. So we need that like upfront capital to even build a site.
And obviously being an entrepreneur and working for yourself and building companies from the age of 21 must have meant that you've had to make a lot of personal sacrifices in your life. Do you ever look back and think, not regret, because you've achieved so much, so it's very difficult to look back with regret, but do you ever, or during that time when all your friends were going out clubbing till early hours, were you ever just thinking, I just want to be 21?
Yeah, of course. I was finding the early stage was really challenging because, to be honest, financially, that was the hardest bit. Like, there was a real shift in when our friends started working for companies. They were earning a lot more money than Eccie and I really felt behind financially. I really felt stuck and I struggled with that. You know, I had overheads that my friends were not experiencing. Not only did I have to pay my kitchen rent, but I had to pay my own rent and Eccie's rent and staff, and I felt really restricted, and I felt quite like I definitely felt the financial pressure was different, and I was in a very different financial position to other friends. That was the hardest bit, but I had Eccie and we were in it together. So we, you know, I definitely did miss out on some of the things that, you know, a 21-year-old does. But then again, I don't know if it's missing out. We try to do both, you know, because we were so young, you have a lot of energy and we were like up in the kitchen at 5, we were out for drinks after work. You just do have that drive to do everything. I don't regret really anything that we did from that age. I think that it's put us in a good position now. And I think your early 20s, as much as people say like, oh, you're just young, you're in your early 20s. Like, those are key age. That's a key like time to put in the foundations of what you want your future to be. And getting familiar with like working and starting a business at, you know, in our early 20s and making mistakes, huge mistakes, so many mistakes, means that like now I really hope that, well, I haven't made those mistakes at Karma Kitchen. I've made other mistakes for sure. Don't worry. Like, we're still making mistakes. But the mistakes that I made in the first business, I've learned so much from them, and I won't put them into the next thing that I'm doing. So it's all a learning. I don't regret that journey at all.
Well, you have a husband, so you've clearly had a bit of time to...
I do apologise to my old ex-boyfriends. I feel like it must have been quite challenging going out with both Eccie and I at that time in our life where things were very up in the air and we were juggling a lot. I'm sure we were hard to go out with.
Yeah, because I think a lot of female entrepreneurs I speak to talk about personal sacrifice, and they're like, I don't have time to date. People dumped me because I didn't have enough availability for them.
And exactly.
Which is nuts. But
never start a relationship when you're starting a business. That's what it doesn't work.
It's good to start a relationship when you've come out of one because you're angry and you feel like you have nothing to lose because you're in the depths anyway. Yeah, and so it's like, I don't care whose life I put at risk, whose livelihood I put at risk, or what I lose because I have nothing left. So
there you go. Like, great advice.
I'm not suggesting everyone should be at the bottom of, but that's how I personally started. Yeah, I think it's difficult, and you may not know this yet, but what is your big goal, or is there something that you think in 5 years I'd like to have achieved ...
Wow, I would say with goals, the most interesting thing about a goal that you have is that when you get there, it unlocks another goal. And it's really hard for me to say what my big goal is, because when I started Karma Kitchen, I thought I was going to have 2 kitchens. And then as soon as I got to a point where I understood that my product could really disrupt a market, and it can literally disrupt like the way that real estate works within food and, you know, be a disruptor, it opened a new set of goals. So I don't think you can have this big goal. I think it changes every few years. You unlock something. Mm-hmm. And again, with raising money, I didn't really know I would ever raise money when I started Karma Cans. I really just thought the only way to run a business is make profit and revenue, and that goes back into business. I've now unlocked a new kind of category of money that I didn't think that we'd be able to do. So I couldn't tell you really what that goal is, because every 2 years, I think that our mind shifts into a different place and we think, okay, this is the way that we want to go. It's just unknown right now. Obviously, I have a business plan and that I want to execute on both sides, but it could change and it could grow and it could be something, it could be multi-territories, it could be a tech piece. It just depends on so many different things and you don't know what you're going to unlock.
I think that's healthy though, because a lot of people who say, I have to have done this by 5 years or I have to have done this by 10 years. You know, mine was, I want to be Forbes 30 under 30 and it never happened. Make my first million by 30. That didn't happen. I never got the call up for that. I heard people pay for it actually.
Oh, interesting.
Not everyone, but some people. Yeah. But I think it's very healthy not putting in these strict timelines for yourself.
Yeah.
If you could give your younger self advice, What would you tell 21-year-old Gini?
Oh my goodness. That's a good question. I think that at the beginning of any business, you look a lot at your competition and who else is in the market. And as you grow, I think there's a tendency also to focus too much on the businesses around you. And when you're focusing too much on the businesses around you, I think that you're looking backwards. And I always say that in Eccie, and I always talk about, like, you know, your competitors. It's important to know like who is doing what you're doing. But if you're so focused on what your competition is doing, you are looking backwards. You're not looking forwards. So I would tell young me to just focus on what we're doing, because obviously if I didn't, I remember just competitors taking up a lot of my mental capacity and worrying about them a lot in catering. Catering is one of the most competitive industries. And now looking back, that was so silly because none of them exist to this day. We have a great product. We still do. We have a really amazing team. And Karma Kitchen's the same. We're the best at what we do. I know that. I can say that hand on my heart. We have the best product in the market. I don't need to worry about my competitors. I'm sure they're all doing great things. They all specialize in different things. But we know that we're the best. Building the best way with an incredible team. And our clients tell us that too. Focus on being the best, having the best product, but also pushing yourselves, pushing your product, because we should be doing more and we should be thinking about in next year what we want to achieve, talk to our clients. So I think I would just tell myself to really just forget about the others.
I think that's
I don't know if everyone would agree with that, but
no,
that's how I feel.
I agree with that, because I spent a lot of time looking at other people, what they'd achieved, their businesses, their journeys, you know, Instagram, when that became a thing.
Yeah.
You know, if they had a product, they were getting into this store, that store. And I was thinking, I've not achieved anything like this. And it's so toxic because you can only look at your own journey, and everyone has a different timeline for things.
Definitely.
And you're right. A lot of these people don't actually. Not that I would wish them not to succeed, but a lot of them actually don't withstand the test of time, because maybe they haven't gone through the things you've gone through and done the failing fast and the, you know, pivoting to new things when the market needs. So
completely.
It's a very valuable lesson. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having
being
me.
here. Keep smashing life. Keep being an example to all the women out there.
Thank you.
And
I'll try.
I'm really excited to follow your journey.
Thank you for having me.